common themes in student evaluations of instruction is students who say, I wasn't prepared for the exam, or they may say it like this, what was on the exam was not what we studied in class. And so, of course, that could be because students didn't study properly, or maybe they didn't even show up to class to know what was going to be on the exam. But it could also be an indication that there's misalignment between the exam and the objectives and what you planned for your students to do in class. So this video is to help make sure that your course has alignment and that when you do give exams, the things that you've helped prepare your students for are actually on the exam. So let me just start off with a little analogy. Let's imagine that you're going to run a 5K and that you hired a personal trainer to help you prepare for that. Now, when you went in for your meeting with your personal trainer, let's imagine that the personal trainer said, here's some nutrition advice, and I'm going to show you pictures of where the race is going to go, and I want you to lift weights for the next few weeks in preparation for that. Well, when it comes time to run the 5K, if he didn't give you any type of instruction on running or how to increase the length of your runs over the next few weeks, then you might feel totally unprepared between what instruction you got and the actual thing that you're wanting to do, the performance that you're going to have on the 5K. So let's talk about how aligning your assessments and your course activities and your objectives can help make sure that your exams are exactly what you told students to prepare for. So alignment just means that you have really clear learning objectives that help identify for students what they are supposed to learn in your course. And then instruction teaches them those skills. Practice allows them to develop the skills. You give feedback that then helps them improve those skills, and then the assessments measure them. So alignment has to happen all the way from objectives through the assessment in order for students to really feel like they're prepared to take those assessments. I'm going to give you 5 really easy steps to help make sure that your course is aligned, and that if you ever have had that appear on your student evaluations, you won't have it appear anymore. So first off, let's talk about starting with really clear learning objectives. So a question that you can ask yourself is, what should students be able to know or do by the end of this unit? So for example, you might want them to simply be able to recall definitions of words. If that's the case, then explicitly state that in your objectives. Or you may want them to do higher order things like analyze or interpret information. If that's the case, then make sure that that's in your objective. Be really clear in your objectives on what you want your students to be able to do. If students know the destination, then it's not difficult for them to prepare for that journey. Step number 2 is to align your instruction with your objectives. So a question you can ask yourself, am I teaching the students the skills and the knowledge that I described in the objective? And this, like, for instance, if you were going to ask students to analyze data, then students need to hear more than a lecture on how to analyze data. They need you to model that and think out loud so that they see the steps in the analysis that they're going to be expected to do. So make sure that your students encounter in class the same type of thinking or skills that they're eventually going to be able to hopefully perform independently. The third step is to align practice with the objectives. So, for instance, if your students are just going to have to identify concepts and recall the information in like recall type questions, then you need to make sure that there are those type of practices built into their study experience. It could be a quiz where they're going to answer questions that are going to be like the ones on your assessment. If they're going to have to analyze a case study on an exam, then you want to have case studies in your class content and allow them to do that maybe in groups in class or individually in class or as homework assignments. So make sure the type of things they're going to be doing on the test are the type of things that they're going to get practice with. Really important concept to understand. Step four is feedback. In order for them to really improve, they're going to have feedback from you. So make sure that when they are practicing, you're having a way to give them feedback so that they can understand where they're doing really well and grasping concepts, or they understand where they need to correct misunderstandings. So that's an important component is they have to have feedback before they get to those high stakes exams. And then lastly, number five is just to align your assessments with the learning objectives. Make sure that what they're doing on the test are they have been properly prepared for in their learning experience. Now that doesn't mean that you're giving them the same exact questions on the exam that you gave them in class. It doesn't mean that you've got to make your tests easier. It doesn't mean that you're teaching to the test. It just means that the assessment questions, the things that they're going to be assessed on, match the cognitive complexity, the difficulty level, the question type, and the performance expectations that you've had throughout the learning experience. So hopefully those five things will help you understand what instructional alignment means and how to make sure your objectives are guiding the whole process from instruction to practice to feedback and then finally assessment, and hoping that you'll never ever hear I wasn't prepared for the test on your student evaluations again.